Drafting is the first big hurdle in the writing process. Here are 5 key tips to help you make the drafting process a little bit more smoother so you can actually make it to the end. Hey there, my name is Megan Rogers. I am a traditionally published author and transformational tarot writing coach, and I am here to help you make your writing dreams come true. I believe these tips and tricks will help you draft a cleaner, smoother novel and actually make it to the end, because that really is the goal of the draft. It's not about it being good, it's about making it to the end. So here are the 5 tips and tricks that I have to help you actually make it to that goal. Tip number 1. Take time to experiment and find your drafting style. Now, there are typically 2 schools of thought on drafting. There's the plotters and there's the pantsers, right? So plotters are people who like to outline and do a lot of brainstorming ahead of time. Pantsers fly by the seat of their pants, and they tend to not have a lot planned before they start writing. They just kind of dive in and let the words flow. And while ultimately these are kind of the 2 schools of thought and 2 approaches to drafting, I think it's also important to recognize that this can really be a spectrum. So this was something it took me a long time to learn because I actually fall in the middle. I'm not a hardcore plotter, but I'm also not a hardcore pantser either. So for me, I started pantsing because why not just dive in and write? And I found myself getting stuck a lot because I did learn I don't do well thinking about the story and writing the story at the same time. So then I plotted out the entire novel. Like I stopped writing and I plotted out the entire novel, and that worked for me to a point, but it was much more successful than flying by the seat of my pants. So that's how I operated for a really long time. But as I started to experiment a little bit more and found my own drafting style, I came to realize that the plotting method, as I was using it, as I was doing it, is actually too rigid for me. And it doesn't leave enough room for the story to evolve if I get too locked into the plot of the entire book from the start. So for me, the middle ground is before the book starts, I have the beginning, the end, and a few core plot points in between that I know I want to hit. And then as I write, I outline a chapter, and then I write a chapter. And then I outline a chapter, and then I write a chapter. And that works really well for me. So don't be afraid to experiment with your style. Find your drafting style. Once you know what works best for you, that's what's going to help you actually move through the draft and make it to the end goal. Because if you're operating in a style that isn't aligned for you, it's going to make writing feel like a chore instead of a delight. And of course, it won't always be a delight. Let's be honest, there are going to be hiccups, but it will be more fun than not if you can find your drafting style and stay true to it. Number 2 is to be flexible about your goals, especially if they are self-imposed goals. It can be very common in the writing community to have hard deadlines, even if we are setting them for ourselves. Maybe it's finishing a draft by a certain date. That's typically how it goes, right? That's the deadline. But it can also mean writing a certain amount of words each day or accomplishing certain goals by a certain point in time. Now, I don't want to completely discard goal setting because that is a really big motivator. It can be something that is really helpful in giving you structure to get your draft done. But if you are going to be really inflexible with your goals, it's going to make it hard for you to actually make it to the end. At least that's been my experience. Because the thing about writing is it's a fluid process, and some days are going to flow better than others. Some scenes are going to flow better than others. Some parts are just going to be really tricky. So if you hit a tricky spot, maybe you don't reach your word count goal that day. That's okay. If you can get through a scene that's really tricky, that can be the win for the day. That can be the goal. Now, of course, this does get a little bit trickier if you are on a publication deadline, like it's somebody else that set the deadline. But most writers I know, especially starting out, you're setting your own deadlines. So again, while having the structure is good, be flexible with yourself, because if you get too rigid and you start feeling like, oh, I have to catch up on days I fell behind, you're going to start to just mount work on top of each other, and getting to the end is going to feel really impossible. I think giving yourself that flexibility is what's ultimately going to help you reach your goal. And that's really the point here, right? So 3, like we just touched on, consistency is the key. Try to avoid setting astronomical writing goals or unrealistic deadlines. It's not going to help you. You are going to be so much more consistent. Similarly, setting writing time aside that's very spaced out, like I would say even once a week might be just not quite enough if you really do want to finish a draft. It's better than nothing, But I would say you want to be at like 3 to 4 times a week would probably be a sweet spot. 2, if that's really all you can swing. I mean, again, 1 is better than nothing, but any less than once a week, you're not showing up consistently then. And you are always going to be better off showing up consistently than doing large batches of work at a time and like driving yourself into the ground. Now, if that truly is your creative cycle, you should totally honor that. But those people are going to be few and far between. So I'm speaking to most people here when I say prioritize consistency. And even if that consistency is 10 to 20 minutes a day, I truly believe you are more likely to finish your book if you write it in 10 to 20 minute segments. Even if it's 10 to 20 minutes a few times a week, it doesn't even have to be every day. But showing up consistently in a way you can manage does 2 things. Not only does it help you get to the end, if you truly are prioritizing a way you can manage, it's going to help you avoid burnout, which I think is really crucial. And as someone who has burned out multiple times writing, I can't begin to tell you how much writing less but more consistently has actually transformed my writing life. 4, drafting tip 4. This is one of my favorites, and it took me a long time to learn this, but skip the parts that slow you down. Like, it's a draft. And for me, one of the fun parts of drafting is it's finally getting to take this idea from your head and put it on paper and experience the characters and experience the scenes and experience your story for the first time. Now, this doesn't mean that every scene you've thought of is going to be fun, or, maybe there's a scene that's necessary that you just don't feel like writing. It's okay. It's a draft. You don't have to write it. You can add a note that like, this is what happens in this scene. This is how I want the characters to feel at the end. This is how it gets us to the next scene. And then in revision or in your second draft, you can come back and fill that in. You don't have to have it all figured out. For the first draft in particular, the goal is to get to the end. Now, of course, you don't want to be doing these like notes for half the book because then you're not really drafting. But to give you an example, there is in my book series, The Ravens Files, which is a young adult spy series, I have a character who is like also in spy school. She is a spy, but she has to go to spy school. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I do like having those school scenes in the book. I think it gives us a greater feel of the environment that the characters are in, but I don't like writing them. They're not that much fun. Like, I like the characters that are in the scenes, but they're just not interesting to me as a writer. So I tend to skip those. It's a very small subplot, and I just kind of made notes about like what they were. And I come back to them later and I fill them in, and it works out just fine. And the last tip, and this I think is a really big one, and that's to write around writer's block. It can be very tempting to just give up when you get blocked. And I'm not saying you shouldn't take a break. Sometimes we do need to take a break, especially if you've been pushing too hard. It is stepping back that will give you that perspective. But if you keep waiting for the block to clear before you move forward, again, you're not going to get to the end. So one big tip I have for you is similar to the previous tip of like adding a note. You can add a note to yourself. Like maybe you don't know how to get from A to B and you have to figure that out later. That's okay. Add that note. Come back to it later. Don't let yourself come to a full stop just because you don't have all the answers yet. It's okay. That's part of drafting, is to figure out what you know and what you don't know and what's working and what's not working. So if you need to reevaluate something, that's totally fine. Just leave a note. Don't let that be the thing that stops you. However, if you are looking for more support navigating writer's block, I do actually have a video about the tool I use so I never get writer's block, and it is super helpful. I hope you will check it out. And if you'd like to learn more about how we can work together, you can find that info in the description box below. I wish you the best of luck with your draft.